Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. So today I have some fast-paced thriller and horror book recommendations for you that will get you out of a reading slump. I've noticed that the books that tend to go viral on Book Talk or on BookTube and just seem to sweep across the community are all super fast-paced, and I feel like they fit in this category. So yes, there are going to be some kind of basic recommendations on this list of 20 books, but there's also going to be some that you probably have never heard of. So it's safe to say if you like the pacing and style of one thriller on this list, you're probably going to like the rest of these. So hopefully you will get some good new thriller recs from this list. Let's go ahead and jump in with some basic faves. I'm not gonna go too into depth with these because you've probably already heard of them. The first one is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is a thriller slash romance book, kind of a dark romance about a woman who takes over for this famous author named Verity, who is in a coma. And so obviously she cannot finish her book series. So this woman named Lowen steps in to finish the series for her. But not only does she step into her career, she also steps into her life. She ends up moving in with Verity's husband and kids into the house where Verity is staying in her vegetative state. And we start to learn that maybe Verity is not too happy with Lowen taking over her life, so she starts to retaliate, or maybe it's all just in Lowen's head. And this book is so fast-paced. This is one that I read in just a matter of hours. I can usually finish a book in a day, but I know if I read it in one sitting, that it's a super fast-paced and just engrossing book, and this was totally that. I remember reading it by the pool and flipping pages so fast I probably looked like a maniac to everyone sitting around me, but it was so good. I know this is a very divisive book. I personally am team manuscript. Comment down below if you're team manuscript as well, but you really can't go wrong with this one if you're looking to get out of a slump. The next recommendation I have for you is No Exit by Taylor Adams, another really quintessential fast-paced thriller book. There was just a movie adaptation released on Hulu that I have mixed feelings about. I definitely think the book is better though. We are following Darby, who is a college student. She is driving home during Christmas break to visit her mom, who is in the hospital. And on the way, she gets trapped in a blizzard and she has to stop at a roadside rest stop. And as she's out trying to look for cell phone service, she sees a girl locked in a cage in the back of a van, and she knows that one of the people that she's snowed in with is responsible for this young girl's kidnapping. It is so fast-paced. I swear, once this book takes off, it does not stop. It is so enthralling. It just sucks you in from the first page. You care about Darby, you care about this little girl, and it's not just like a quick and dirty kind of thriller, if you know what I mean. There are real emotions on the page, and you really feel how Darby's feeling, and you're rooting for her so hard. I have never felt such empathy for a main character in a thriller until Darby. I loved her character so much. And that is a lot of what I did not like about the movie, as I feel like they really stripped that side of Darby's character. But in the book, it is so well done. This remains one of my very favorite thrillers ever. If you want something to get you out of a slump, this will do it. My mom takes forever to read books compared to me, and I'm pretty sure she read this one in a day or two. So if she can read it fast, it's super fast-paced. I would also recommend The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This is another one that is super popular. It's following a psychotherapist who moves to this new hospital to tackle a really challenging case that none of the other therapists at this hospital have ever been able to crack. And it is a woman who stabbed her husband, I think like 27 times or something, and then never spoke a word. So nobody knows why she did it, why she committed this murder, and he is determined to crack her and figure out why she committed this crime. It's told in like very quick, short chapters, and it just makes the book fly by so fast. And the twist at the end of this one is crazy. I definitely did not see it coming. I stayed up until 3 in the morning to read this one because I just had to know what was happening, and it did not disappoint. When I got to that twist, it was shocking, but also like satisfying at the same time. And the ending just absolutely blew my mind. If you haven't read The Silent Patient yet, get out from under the rock you're living under. You have to read this one. I also want to recommend The Arrangement by Kirsten Magdalene. This is a teeny tiny thriller, super short, super sweet, and super fast paced. This one personally got me out of a slump, and because of that, it was a 5-star read. We are following this husband and wife. It's a very, kind of basic domestic thriller plot, and they decide that they want to spice up their marriage by having an arrangement where one day a week they each get to go on a date, a one-night stand if it turns into that, and it's just allowed in their marriage. So they're kind of opening it up, but with opening up their marriage, they open themselves up to some dangerous people that they are going on these dates with. And oh my god, this is the reason why they call Kirsten Magdalene the queen of twists. I thought I knew what was going on, and then you flip a page and you realize you were completely wrong. Then you flip another page to the next chapter and there's another twist. It's just layered and layered and layered up. At the end of this book, it was so exciting. It had me on the edge of my seat, and I know this is one that a lot of people recommend, but I really stand by it. Next, I want to talk about the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. This one is sweeping the internet, and it is another series that got me completely out of a reading slump, actually to the point where I think I read 25 books in the month that I read the Mindfuck series, because it is just so fast-paced. It is crazy. It is easy to read. Each book in this 5-book series is only about 100 pages long, and they're on Kindle Unlimited, so they're super easy to just bang out. And we are following in this series Lana, a wonderfully devious revenge female serial killer. She is seeking revenge for a traumatic event that happened to her and her brother so many years ago back in her hometown, and everyone that's connected to the event, she hunts them down and kills them in very brutal ways. The torture is described on page, so trigger warnings for that. Also trigger warnings for sexual assault and trauma in this one. There's a lot going on. And if that wasn't enough for you, there's also a romance subplot. Our main character actually has a romance with the FBI agent who is in charge of her case, but of course he has no idea that he's actually dating the killer that he is looking for. This series is absolutely crazy, insane, and it just goes off the rails by the end, but you're just so invested that it's like you don't even care. And you can definitely read like one book every couple hours and bang the whole series out in a day. It's so good. And I know a lot of people don't like this series. They think it's trashy or not well written. I don't care. Bury me with the Mindfuck series. I absolutely love it. In kind of the same vein of darker serial killer romance, I also want to recommend the Saints and Sinners Duet by Sophie Lark. This 2-book series follows 2 artists who are kind of competing in the art world in San Francisco. They release pieces and try to one-up each other, which is what the public sees, but behind the scenes, they're also competing with kills, and they are both secretly serial killers. The trouble comes in when one guy tries to murder a girl that one of the guys is kind of into, but she ends up coming back and falling in love with that guy who literally left her for dead. Are you kidding me? How do you come back from that? And somehow, some way, I'm still in support of this romance, so you know it has to be good. Again, tons of trigger warnings for this series. There is on-page serial killer action, torture, and there's also a lot of smut in these two books. So if you like 50 Shades of Grey, but you just wanted it to be a little bit darker, this is going to be the duology for you. They are so fast-paced, and the special thing about these books that really will take you out of the slump is there's a playlist that you actually can listen to along with the book that is perfectly timed to each section where there's a designated song. It just made it so much more atmospheric. The imagery was so vivid. It literally felt like a movie in my head as I was reading these, and I'm absolutely obsessed with Sophie Lark since reading the Saints and Sinners Duet. Next up, I have a kind of controversial recommendation, and that is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. To me, this was a pretty perfect thriller. I read it in a few hours. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and it was such a fun ride. I know a lot of people hated this one. I have a theory that I've talked about a lot when talking about this book that made me really, really love it. I'm not gonna go into my whole Survive the Night rant right now because I'm sure my longtime viewers have heard it enough times at this point. I will link down below and up above a video where I'm talking about my full Survive the Night theory of why I love this book so much. But besides the point of the deeper meaning that I took from this book, I also just think this is a great fast-paced thriller, especially if you are new to the genre. I feel like you will absolutely love this book. It is set in the 90s, and we are following a girl who's hitching a ride home for winter break with a guy who is supposedly the campus killer. Obviously, she doesn't know that when she hitches a ride with him, but halfway through, she starts to realize that this may be the killer stalking and killing girls around her campus, including one of the victims was her roommate. So it just adds another layer to the story. Our main character is super paranoid and having delusions and periods of dissociation, so we don't quite know if we can trust her the whole time. And this one will definitely, like I said, keep you on the edge of your seat. This is another one that I had to read in the night that I started it because I had to know what was happening. One author who you can probably predict at this point, who is one of my favorites and I think writes the most amazing, enthralling, fast-paced thrillers is, you know, Jennifer Hillier. And one of my favorites of hers is The Butcher. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this one, although I have influenced a lot of people to read this one, which is one point of pride for me being on BookTube. I love convincing people to read Jennifer Hillier. This one is one of my favorites. It is another one like Survive the Night where I had to stay up the full night that I started reading it and finish it to see what happens. We are following this guy as he moves into the house he inherited from his grandpa. His grandpa's moving to like a retirement facility, so he gave his nice, wonderful, historic house to his son and his son's soon-to-be wife. When he moves into his grandfather's house, he finds some old evidence that was buried in the case of an infamous serial killer that his grandfather worked. His grandfather was the chief of police at the time when this serial killer was caught. But when he finds this bag of evidence, he starts to believe that the wrong man was put away. And to add an extra layer to the story, his soon-to-be fiance's mother was believed to be killed by the serial killer. So there's a personal investment in the case for him, and he starts digging into the case only to find out that it goes a lot deeper than he thought. This book is gruesome. It is fast. It feels like an action movie, especially in the last chapters. It's like a train wreck that you cannot look away from. So good. And look how cute this little tiny book is. I love it. I also want to recommend Creep and Freak by Jennifer Hillier. This is another duology that is so fast-paced. There's also romantic elements to all of Jennifer Hillier's thrillers. I did want to mention that in case you're not a romance fan, but I definitely don't think the romance subplots take away from the thriller plots. In Creep and Freak, we are following a professor at a university who believes that one of her graduate students is a killer that is picking off all of these girls around the campus. But the catch is that she's having an affair with him, and when her boyfriend proposes to her, she decides she wants to cut it off, and then she fears that she will be his next victim. I want to leave it at that because I think there's a lot more to the story and you should go in blind with it. It is so crazy. Big trigger warnings for these. I have never seen some of the things that are featured in these two books. Like, they're just absolutely crazy. I'm talking like fake skin masks, like American Horror Story vibes. It is absolutely insane. And these are another two that I never hear anybody talk about. I also wanted to mention a book by a new favorite author for me, The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. This was my first ever book club pick for this month, and I'm so happy to report it was a 5-star for me. I cannot wait for the discussion, but this one follows kind of a creepy child kind of trope in this thriller. It's really similar to The Push by Ashley Audrain, but I would say it is way darker, way more fast-paced, and a lot better, just in my personal opinion. I think The Push is beautifully written, but this one is, think of The Push, but more of a thriller, if you know what I mean. It doesn't dwell on the emotions and the grief as much as The Push, and it goes into the dark, fast-paced, twisty plot of a thriller following these two parents who have struggled with infertility, finally find their way to a daughter, and she is not what they thought she would be. Next, let's get into a couple horror recs. My first one, this one actually got me out of a slump around Halloween this past year, is Camp Slaughter by Sergio Gomez. I cannot wait for the sequel to this book. I am literally stalking Sergio Gomez's Instagram, waiting, seeing his progress, and getting so excited for the sequel to Camp Slaughter because it was so good. It just literally was like a slasher movie in book form. It follows these dumb-ass teenagers as they go camping in the forest and get picked off one by one by an inbred cannibalistic maniac serial killer. What more could you want? Another super fast-paced horror is The Clown Hunt by Judith Sonnet. I just read this one. It's a little under 200 pages, and it was so fast-paced. I did it again. Stayed up till 2 in the morning to finish this book because I needed to just see the gruesomeness. This one wasn't even about seeing like how it ended, what happened. It was more about just seeing how far is this book really gonna go? Because it is not your typical horror novel. It is extreme horror. So be aware of that. Big, huge trigger warnings for everything under the sun, including infant death on page with very, very disgusting descriptions. So just be aware of that. This book is not for the faint of heart. My mom is one who will always say she likes the deeper, the darker, the more gruesome, the better. And she cannot handle extreme horror. We found out she is not a fan. So even if you think you can handle it, maybe just look up the trigger warnings because this one is really intense and it kind of plays on the 2016 weird moment we had where like people would dress up as clowns and just like stand in the street. And it opens with a bang and it does not stop the entire book. It goes absolutely crazy, and this book is super diverse. We have a gay Black main character, which we love to see in horror. I feel like finding diverse horror is something that I've been super into over the past couple years, and I'm so happy to see more books coming out with diverse horror rep. And this is by a trans author as well. She writes a lot of queer representation in this book, which I love to see. Sex worker rep as well. So this book is just amazing all around. If you like a lot of deep, dark, gruesome horror and you're scared of clowns and you want a diverse LGBT rep, this book will be perfect for you, just like it was for me. I enjoyed every bloody second of it. Next up, I actually have a YA recommendation. I know, usually it's a YA thriller that is putting me into a slump, but this one actually got me out of it because of the short chapters and breakneck pace. That is 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. I will never stop hyping up this book. It is so good. If you're a fan of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, you will absolutely fall in love with this one. We are following our main character whose mother was brutally murdered by an infamous serial killer who has still never been caught. He is at large and he is looking for his 14th victim. So in order to kind of set a trap for him, draw him in, and catch him, our main character goes on an internet reality show to kind of put herself out there as bait, and it works. She draws his attention and we start to investigate and figure out who the killer actually is. These chapters are so short. There's literally like over 100 something chapters and it's 300 pages. So you can imagine how quick this book can fly if you're just flipping through the chapters, and it is just so much fun. Don't take this one too seriously, as you really shouldn't take any YA book too seriously, but this one was just good, fun, and it was a lot darker than I expected a lot of YA thrillers to be. This is definitely more on the level of Tiffany D. Jackson rather than like a Maureen Johnson kind of situation. Another recent read I would recommend is The Replacement Wife by Darby Kane. This one is another that I just read in a couple sittings in a few hours because I had to know what was happening. It is operating on the trope of unreliable narrator, a main character who we're not sure if she has memory issues, mental health issues, or if she's just being gaslit by everyone around her, and we're trying to figure out what's happening. Our main character believes that her brother-in-law is a killer because every single one of his past partners has either gone missing, turned up dead, or run away from him. So we're trying to find out if this is actually the case or if she is just crazy. And it kept me guessing until the very, very end. It was one of those disorienting, kind of trippy thrillers like The Girl on the Train or The Woman in the Window. So if those sound like things that you've already loved, you will definitely like this one as well. Next, I want to talk about one of my favorite books that I just keep pushing down your throat. So you've probably heard me recommend this one before. Take It Back by Kia Abdullah. This one is insane, and it's not just like crazy, fast-paced, twisty thriller. I mean, it is that, but it also has something to say, and y'all know that is what I love. And this book, I still don't know how I feel about it, to be quite honest. There's a lot of moral dilemma in this book, a lot of different cultural representation that I didn't know about before reading this book. It takes place in the UK, and we're following a Muslim woman who is a victim's advocate for women that have experienced sexual assault. So one day, a deformed, disabled white girl comes into her office and claims that she was allegedly raped by a group of Muslim boys. Well, this obviously puts our main character in a very difficult position, because does she want to believe this girl, as she claims to do, believe all women and go against her community, or should she do a little bit more research before condemning these Muslim boys who are already facing so much racism and xenophobia in her community? It will tear at your heartstrings, make you feel deep, deep emotions, and keep you on the edge of your seat. That is just the best combination in a book for me, and I highly recommend this one. The next recommendation I have for you is a domestic thriller, For Better and Worse by Margot Hunt. This follows a husband and wife who are struggling with the actions of their son. He gets caught in a difficult situation, and instead of going to the police, since the husband and wife are both involved in the law, I think they're both like lawyers, attorneys, or law adjacent in their careers, they know how the law will treat their son, and so they decide to go around the law and do some really horrifying things. And it seeks to answer the question, how far would you go for your family? And this is so similar to a few that I've talked about, where it's like, once it takes off and that inciting incident is over, you cannot put it down. It is so fast-paced, and the audiobook for this one is really great as well. I recently read this one in a 5-star prediction vlog, and it was in fact a 5-star. So I will link that one above and below if you want to watch me reading this book and my real-time thoughts. Next, I want to talk about The Good Lie by A.R. Torre. I own this book and I love it. I don't have it with me right now because my mom is actually reading it. She just texted me that she's really liking it. So this is a super short, super fast-paced thriller from A.R. Torre. A.R. Torre, very similar to Jennifer Hillier, two of my favorite authors, include romantic subplots with their thrillers, which I think just ups the intrigue. It keeps me reading. But this book follows a psychologist who specifically works with serial killers, and she gets called in to a case where the defense attorney that's calling her to the stand is actually defending the accused killer of his son. Lots of psychological things and evaluations to work out with this one, and it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and unearths all these layers to the story. It's another one like The Arrangement that has twist on twist on twist. You think it's done and then it just keeps going. This was another 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it, and I highly recommend it because I don't hear like anybody talking about it. Next up, I want to recommend An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This one also follows a psychiatrist. I think she's a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist. Something in there. I don't know if it expressly says what this woman's license is. I'm probably the only person who actually cares what her specific license is, but she starts working with this girl as a part of a study, and what the girl does not know is the person who's running the study knows a lot more about her than she thinks, and I'm gonna leave it at that. I want it to be vague. I want you to go in a little bit blind because I think it will shock you a lot more. And this one was super, super fast paced for me. I know this is one that some people aren't absolutely loving, but something about it just did it for me. I was able to relate to both perspectives, the girl going through the psychological experiment as well as the therapist who is running the experiment. I thought they both had very weird motives, and it was kind of like a stalkery kind of situation where the girl character does not know how far confidentiality goes, and the therapist character is kind of playing it fast and loose with the word confidentiality, so it is scary in that way. And yeah, it's just really great. I don't know what else to tell you. It's not one to take too seriously. You know, it's kind of just a fun one. This doesn't have a lot to say, but it is definitely a wild ride. One that I went into not expecting a lot that totally blew me away and surprised me was Her Pretty Face by Robin Harding. I absolutely loved this book. Going into it, I thought it was just gonna be like a basic domestic thriller. Little did I know it was gonna go super, super dark, have twist on twist on twist, and be super fast paced as well. This is another one that I read on audiobook, and I thought the audiobook was phenomenal. So if you're an audiobook lover, I highly recommend that format. But in this book, we are following a menagerie of characters in this family, and each of them have some tricky secrets that they are keeping from each other, much like all of Robin Harding's books, but it just goes a little bit deeper than that family domestic style thriller, and it opens up some legal elements that are brought in, some like true crime feeling elements as well. I'm trying to be super vague because I want you to be really shocked when you go into this one. I think it will have such a big impact if you go in relatively blind, but I just was not expecting what this book was giving me. And the 20th thriller recommendation I have for you is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This one is just too good. I knew at about the 40% mark reading this book that it was going to be a 5-star, and it did not let me down the entire way through. This is another one that I read in one sitting. We are following a queer female serial killer. Yes, you heard that right. This is in fact the book of my dreams, as she picks off all of the horrifying men that work on her college campus because she's a professor, and all the guys who get like sexual assault allegations that the university does nothing about. She goes ahead and takes care of them for us to keep her fellow women safe. So that is simply my dream premise, and it goes a lot deeper than that as well. It is super dark. Again, it has LGBT rep. It is fast-paced. You have a serial killer POV. There's some of those like stocky elements that feels like You by Caroline Kepnes. So if you're a fan of that, you will definitely like this one as well. And I'm sure you've heard me recommend it before. I stand by it. All right, guys, I hope you got a new fast-paced thriller recommendation from this video. If you did, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in my next video. Don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. Bye!